They let me out. They just kicked me out and let me out, and I went back to my hometown, and I did what I do best. Rob, steal, lie, cheat, everything. Wasn't long before I got arrested again and again. I did several stints in county jail, city jails. Everywhere I went, I ended up in a jailhouse. You know, by this time, I decided that jail was an occupational hazard. You know, it's like everybody else goes on vacation. I just went to jail for a little while, and then I'd get back out and I'd start over again. Well, I think it was in '85, and in this process, I'd gotten a whole bunch of DWIs and drug charges and all that stuff. Today I got 6 DWIs, I got about 20 drug charges. You know, they took all my charges and they kept enhancing them and enhancing them. 1985, I woke up one night, I was in a blackout going down I-35. It's the main highway that goes through Texas. I was head on with a Greyhound bus. All I remember about that night is I looked off in the ditch and there was a cop in the ditch. He's flying, man. And I thought, what is this fool doing? You know, he's chasing me on the wrong side of the road. He's in the ditch trying to get me off before I run into this bus. Well, God was with me that night because I ran off the road before I killed this people. You know, and there's no doubt about that in my mind. You know, merely by the grace of God, do I stand here today. There, you know, and I'm sure we all had it. There was thousands of times that I should have been put in the ground. I got caught there in Hill County, and they were a pretty strict county, and they filed an enhancement that I was an enhanced criminal, and they sent me back to prison. This time I went to prison, and you know, before I went to prison, I swore this time, I'm not going to play with you, God. You know, I played with you last time. I'm going to go down here, do my time, and do what I got to do. You know, I had several brothers come up and ask me, do you know God? I said, yeah, I know him. I'm not worthy of him. He can't do nothing for me. So I did my time. I had a Bible while I was down there, though. The day of my release, they sent me to the Walls Unit, and that's where everybody walked out. And they got a 55-gallon drum out there. They recycled God. That's what I always say, they recycle. Walked out the door, that's the first thing I did, threw God in that drum. I threw him in that drum so somebody else could have him, because I wasn't worthy of it. Before I got out of that town, I had a needle in my arm, I had a drink in my hand, and I was hell-bound and ready to go. By the time I got to my hometown, it was on. I did I did exactly what I knew to do, and that was to be a dope fiend. That's all I ever knew. You know, and the whole time my family's standing back there behind me. You know, my father, he was one of these guys. He'd sit by the police scanner at night, and when they arrested me, he beat me to the jailhouse and had me bonded out. He'd already paid. You know, they'd book me in, and they'd say, man, you're free to go. Little did he know he was killing me. But he was trying to save his son. He always called me his wandering son. He always wondered where I was at, what jail I was in, what town I was in, or what I was doing. My mother, you know, she worked with kids all her life with the Girl Scouts, and she was a teacher and all that. She just couldn't figure out where she went wrong with me. You know, so the turmoil is I tore the whole family apart in the process. You know, the whole time I thought I'm out there doing this to myself. You know, just me, I ain't hurting no one. I hurt the whole family. I hurt a lot of people. Friends got where they wouldn't even run around with me no more. We'd go to a bar, I'd start a fight. You know, I was trying to get somebody to hurt me, I think. Now that I look back at it, because I didn't want to live. You know, and I'd already made a pact with the devil that I was going to live with him and run with him, that I was always going to be that way. So right after I did my second deal there in Texas prison, I got out, and my dad had come down with cancer. Of course, I was out running the streets, and I was never at home, you know, and he was going to die. There was no doubt about it. I still remember the day we were down at the Texas coast somewhere partying for some spring break or something. You know, I'd been down there all weekend. I come home and I was too messed up. I dropped my brother off. My dad standing in the backyard waving at me. You know, I drive off. I just waved at him. I thought, man, something's not right. I didn't know that night, but he passed away that night. That was the last time I'd ever get to see him. That was the changing point in my life. But the bad part is it was a bad changing point. Because I started ripping and running and running straight to hell. I went on a run. I ended up being addicted to heroin. I ran from town to town, in and out to jailhouses and everything else. You know, and I just figured that my mom figured that one day they were going to call her and they found me in a ditch somewhere dead, overdosed or something. You know, I came back home finally. I settled in there in my hometown. I've done gone through 3 marriages, destroyed every one of them. You know, destroyed jobs, careers, everything. You know, it like a whirlwind. I just went through it, tore it up, and left it. You know, and I wasn't raised that way. The bad part is I had a conscience about that, and that's what drove me harder and harder and harder. I came back home and, you know, I wasn't about to work. I wasn't about to get a job. That just wasn't my style. Next thing I knew, somebody walked in my door. They had the drug task force and U.S. Marshals and a whole bunch of other people. They got me for the last time. You know, they came in and found everything I had in the house. I got out on bond, and you know, and I found me a very high-priced lawyer. He told me I better get him some money. So that's what I did. I went and did what I did best. In that process, I get arrested again. Trying to get the lawyer some money to get me out of trouble, I get arrested again and again. See, I'm not very smart. I'm not the smartest cookie in the bunch. But, you know, in the process of all this in and out of jails, I didn't know it until I looked up and realized that I became institutionalized. I could live perfectly in jail. I was a perfect model prisoner. I could do everything that I needed to do while I was in prison. I could do everything I needed to do to get out of prison. I just couldn't do it out here. So I pretty much decided that was going to be my destiny. Little did I know that the DA was about to decide that too. They took all my charges and filed them together, and they wanted to file habitual criminal on me. And, you know, I started thinking, I'm going to be a habitual criminal because I'm a drug addict, I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a liar and a thief. I still hadn't snapped, though. My lawyer told me, he said, you're looking at probably 50, 60 years. With your record, you'll do 20, 25, 30, no big deal. You know, I had that mentality, oh, well, I can do that. That's no biggie. But at home, at night, I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking, man, I can't do this. I can't do no 25, 30 years sitting in prison. I'm too old for it. I wasn't 30 something then. You know, I got sent back down. I ended up, I don't know why, there's a judge here in Waco, I think because he knew my family. I ended up with 7 years. They sent me to a drug treatment in-house, in prison yards, you know, and I already knew when I went down there, they told me we were going to a drug treatment center, and I thought, yeah, okay, it's prison. When I got down there, I fought for 6 months. You know, my insanity, they was fixing to try to help me. I don't want help. I fought to get out of that prison. I filed writs. I wrote to the judge. I did everything I could. Just take me out of this prison, put me in a regular prison where I know where to live. I know how to live. Don't do this to me. Well, that judge wouldn't fall for it no more. The lawyer wouldn't fall for it. You know, the judge wouldn't fall for it. The DA wouldn't fall for it. They left me there. You know, in and out of prison, I became a very prejudiced person. You know, and that's not saying that with pride or anything. I just didn't like other people. There was a guy down there that I was supposed to talk to him like twice a week and tell him all my problems and tell him, you know, what was going on with me. And I'd go in there twice a week and stare at him for 30 minutes and get up and leave. The man was a colored man. And I didn't like him. Didn't know nothing about him. I just didn't like him. You know, and that was one of my problems too. I didn't like all that. Finally, he told me one day, he said, you know, Dwight, quit coming to my office. There's nothing we can do for you. You're going to be a liar, a thief, and a drug addict, and everything for the rest of your life. You're going to spend the rest of your life locked up somewhere in a system. I walked out of there, you know, and I thought, I finally got what I wanted. I got this man to leave me alone. The last thing he told me, though, if I ever wanted to be somebody, I better get on my knees and ask God. Well, that time, I didn't think God had anything to do with me. And I was in prison. And my pride and ego and all that wasn't going to let me do that. I went back to my cell. I laid there half the night. We had these little cubicles with a wall about this tall. I wasn't going to let no other man see me get on my knees and pray. One thing, they'd say you're weak. Next thing, they'd be trying to take advantage. You know, I laid there long enough thinking about it. And I thought, you know, I've tried everything else. I've tried to be a good dope addict. I've tried to be a good alcoholic. I've tried to be a good thief. I wasn't good at none of them. The only thing I was good at was living in prison. And that wasn't no badge of honor. Late that night, I got on my knees. I fell down on my knees, and I think for the first time, I really meant something. I asked God, I said, come, take it, man, do with me whatever you can. I'm not worth a crap. I'm not very good. But I'll give you a chance. See what you can do with it. I got up, I thought, okay, well, I did that. Next day, it was the same old day, you know. Wake up in prison and wake up at 3 o'clock, go eat and all that crap. I'm walking down the hall, I seen this guy that I don't like. It's supposed to be my counselor or something. He looked at me, he said, you did it. I looked at him, I said, did what? He said, you did it. It took me a week to figure out what he was talking about. Because I didn't feel no different. You know, but little did I know that God had a plan for me. Out of all the trials and tribulations and stuff that I tore up, families I tore up, wife relationships I tore up, things, you know, that I'm not proud of today, but it took me every bit of it to get where I'm at today. That was in 1993 that I got on my knees and asked God to take over my life. I figured, well, when I get out, I'm going to go back and do the same thing that I always did. I just throw God in that barrel when I walk out the door, and it's over with. And I'll keep running the streets until I'm locked up for the rest of my life. I don't know what was different. I don't know what I did different. But this time I walked out, and God didn't let me down. I walked out of the prison. They sent me to a halfway house to live there, and you know, and next thing I know, I got a job. I didn't know what to do with the job. I didn't even go to get a job. I was hauling everybody else to get the job. I was the only one that got hired. But I got that job, and I stayed with it for about 6 years. As well as I remember, it was paying like $5 an hour, and I thought, man, I'd never worked for this in my life. But you know, I ended up staying there and I worked. Next thing I knew, God started doing things in my life. I've been sober for 20-something years now. I've been off of drugs for 20 years. Biggest achievement is I've been out of prison for 20 years. My mother passed away probably 6 years ago, and she couldn't have been prouder. You know, the only regret I had is my dad never got to see it, but I know he's up there looking down. Right. He's up there looking down saying, well, that knucklehead finally got it. He tried everything in his power. I finally got it. I travel all over the state of Texas. I've been to every prison I ever spent time in. I've been to every prison in the state of Texas. I've been on their volunteer list for 20-something years for going inside the walls. You know, and the first time I walked in there, I heard the clang, and I thought, I'm home. I've seen some of the old bosses I knew. But today I look back, I don't know why God chose me, but He did. The most I can do is try to walk the walk today. Try to pass it on to somebody else, so they don't have to go through the trials and tribulations that I did. That's how I met Sean and a bunch of others like that. You know, today, I'm free. I'm free of everything in here, everything up here. I have no worries today. I own a business and all that. But you know what? That's all materialized stuff. If I was sleeping on the streets, God would be taking care of me. He would be feeding me. Just because I had a little bit of faith in Him. You know, and that's all it takes. I only wish it was 20-something years earlier that I figured that out. You know, that I didn't have to go through everything I went through. There was times they gave me a sentence one time. They gave me a probation, and they told me I had to go to AA meetings 7 times a week. I called the lawyer in the middle of the night and said, man, you lied to me. I won't even have time to get high. He said, well, we can go back to court. You can take jail time. I went back and took the jail time. That's how stupid I am. I figure, well, I'll just do jail time, then I can do what I want to do. But you know, today that walking that walk with God, I don't have to put up with none of that no more. When I got on my knees that night, 93, little did I know that God took everything from me. I don't have the urge to use anything. I don't have the worries. I don't have the hatred in my heart. You know, I don't have none of that. I know one thing, that God is alive today. You know, and I stand here by all rights. I should have been dead a long, long time ago, or sitting in a jail cell somewhere down in Texas. You know, I was so thankful when they asked me to come out here and share some of my story. Yet I was nervous too, because I'm still just that recovering old drunk and alcoholic. But today I'm a Christian. You know, and that's the difference. That's the biggest difference. You know, I work with alcoholics and drug addicts that are in recovery. And I see it on a daily basis. The lost souls that can't just do it. They just can't get off it. And I was there. I just couldn't do it. I tried everything I could think of to do it, and I couldn't do it. There's only one person that did it for me, and that was God. He's the one that took all the want to out and put me back out here on the streets. You know, and that old guy that I hated so much, 20 years, me and him been good friends. I still stay in contact with him. I still look up to that man. And the funny thing is, he looks up to me. I can't figure that out. But I don't see colors today. I see people. I see hearts.
Amen.
And half the people that I did time with, if I tell them that 20 years down the road, I was sitting here in Florida at a church, and all this was going on, I was sitting there a while ago thinking, you know, by all rights, everybody out here ought to have a beer in their hand and party. But they're not. All rights are sitting here with God in their heart. He's worshiping. We're all worshiping Him. And we all know He's alive. Because my mind still tells me that sometimes that that's where I should be. But I know today it's not for me. You know, I appreciate Sean asking me to come down here. It was a long trip. It's like a little skip and a hop over there to Texas. You know, but over the years I've learned that when people call and ask you, you're supposed to get up and go do it. You know, when the state of Texas calls me and says they want me to go somewhere, I go do it. You know, and one of the funniest things in my life since I've been born again, I was a prison guard for the state of Texas.
I won't hold it against you.
I was collecting unemployment, and I went down and I thought, well, I know they won't hire someone like me. So, you know, you're supposed to look for a job. I applied and they hired me. Never in my days did I think I'd be wearing a suit as a prison guard. Never. That's one I never thought. So, you know, my God's got a sense of humor about Him.
Go ahead and pray on the food.
You know, and He puts me in the places where I need to be. Just like then, He put me in the places where I need to be. I ended up working in the youth prison, and man, I tell you what, it was an experience. And when I left there, all them kids, they all wrote me letters. They all wanted to know why I left. I just couldn't stay there and watch the way they treated them. But I've learned over the years that you better watch out what you ask for. Especially when God's carrying you all the way. He carried me for 20-something years, and I didn't know it. You know, my mama laid back and prayed for me every night. They got a life insurance policy. They knew that sooner or later they're going to find me. She prayed. Her prayers were answered. Today, my prayers are answered. And I really feel special today that I got to come down here and meet all y'all. Got to stand up on the stage. I feel special that I'm alive and able to do it. And I want to thank Sean. I'm proud of him. Don't want to swell his head up too big. You know, because back, I was really worried about this guy. Back in the day. But he came out here and he found his way. That's what it's all about. Finding your way. You know, I had a man tell me, that man that I hated so much, that don't try and paint your picture's already painted. It took me a long time to figure that one out. You know, but God had a plan for me long before I had a plan for me.
Amen.
All I had to do was just keep going. You know, and he keeps using me every day on a daily basis. Somehow, somewhere, in my work and everything else, you know, he keeps working. But I'm glad I got to come down here to share with y'all. It's been an awesome weekend. I met some awesome people. But I'm going to let y'all go eat because